Hey everyone, it's Michele B with today's hashtag So Boca Story Spotlight with my friend Thomas Zeichman. He's an attorney here in Boca Raton, and I'm going to do a quick look at my notes. Partner at Bailey, Myrick, Udell, and Lynn PA, who focuses his practice on representation of debtors, creditors, and trustees in a variety of aspects of bankruptcy. So today we're going to talk about bankruptcy, when you need it, why you might need it. I'll let Tom tell us a little bit about his educational background. He's an attorney here in Boca Raton, and I'm going to do a quick look at my notes. Partner at Bailey, Myrick, Udell, and Lynn PA, who focuses his practice on representation of debtors, creditors, and trustees in a variety of aspects of bankruptcy. So today we're going to talk about bankruptcy, when you need it, why you might need it. I'll let Tom tell us a little bit about his educational background, and we're going to do like rapid fire questions. And if you have any questions after you watch this or listen on the So Boca Stories podcast, feel free to shoot me an email. And of course, you can send questions over to Tommy. He will be happy to answer anything for you, and we'll have all his information in the description or the show notes. And off and running we go. Thanks so much for joining me, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Michele.
My pleasure. Welcome to my kitchen, since my internet is not working so greatly in other parts of my house. So
I was going to say we're getting an insight into everyone's homes now with all the Zoom meetings.
I know, and how messy everyone really is. Because then you go, if you looked behind me, or in front of me, it's actually not bad. But yeah, I've had to like negotiate a lot of space and move stuff around because of the wide angle on these interviews. So anyways, thanks for coming on, and just tell everybody a little quick snippet about yourself, and then we'll get right into the questions that I have for you.
Sure. As you mentioned, I practice law in Boca Raton. I attended FAU, Go Owls, for my undergrad. I stayed involved on the alumni board, and I'm on planning and zoning in Boca Raton. And I attended Nova for law school. I practiced at a couple of firms in downtown Fort Lauderdale and here in Boca, and now I have my home in Bailey, Myrick, and Udell, where I lead the Bankruptcy Department.
That's amazing. And you just really went over there, correct? As of this interview, it was pretty quick.
I did. I started about a week ago, and a lot of things were going on. I had some good friends who are now my partners over there, and we looked at it and their practices. They were very sharp on litigation and real estate and corporate, and didn't have a bankruptcy department. So I decided to join my friends in Boca and start up the bankruptcy department. And for me, it was a pretty easy move because I was working remotely anyway. So I'm continuing to work from my home office and have my phone calls coming through. That's one of the, we'll get to it a little bit, but that's one of the great things about these voice over internet phones. You can plug them in and it's like you're at the office.
Yeah, very much so. It's not new for some of us working from home. I've always worked from home as well. Mm-hmm. And I think the volume of Zoom meetings has ticked up, and as I just said to someone, in many cases it's still just a phone call. You don't need to Zoom, but that'll wear off in a little bit. Everybody's getting zoomed out. I think give it another week and people are like, can you just call me?
Sure.
So
everyone but my mom, she'll still.
Well, it's new, it's kind of, and it works. It's great. I was on a Zoom networking, virtual networking today. As you know, I'm also a full-time real estate agent and the founder of hashtag So Boca. And so I'm on with real estate agents around the country, brainstorming, masterminding, as well as talking to some of my clients. So it's very interesting how we've adapted very quickly in most cases to having to do this, and under very difficult circumstances,
Absolutely.
And we've known each other a long time. So I was like, oh, tell me, come on my show.
We were on the Homeowners Association together. So I was going to get into a little bit about what it's been like to practice law in this new world where we find ourselves.
Great.
So So I'm a bankruptcy lawyer, and a lot of times things are emergencies. You're either trying to put off a big court date, or some big judgments coming around the corner, or there's a foreclosure sale, either an office building or a personal residence. So there's some level of urgency. So I've always had to have some set up at home and a secured server so that I can go in and have my access to my files from home, because I may have to file a bankruptcy at 11:30 at night. That's just when it happens, and I'm on the phone. So a lot of that was kind of set up. But one of the big differences to doing it now is I have a team, and I want to be mindful and effective and really think about everybody else's time. So we've all tried to keep our same hours. You know, it's while I may be a night person or a really early 4 a.m. person, I've tried to maintain that 8:30 to 5:30 time period where I'm able to interact with my team, make sure that they have what they need in order to move projects and clients forward. And if I know that I'm going to be out early in the morning and just not available for a couple of hours, I'll send emails and early in the day and kind of line up what the day should look like. So just being really thoughtful, because you're kind of isolated, but there's 4 or 5 other people that you ordinarily work with. Just thinking about them and what will help them succeed will help drive your day. And that's what I found has been helpful for me.
That's awesome. And that you're still available. And I like what you just said, because emergencies are still happening, whether it's a health emergency, financial emergency, like you said, foreclosures. I'm in real estate. I remember so much of that from the 2008 downturn and crash. And we'll get to that in a minute too, because I think that's going to be important. Sure. So one of the questions that has come up in regard to, like, are the courts still operating? Are they doing everything status quo, or have they shifted to accommodate when you have to file something or you have to, say, do something with a judge?
Sure. The courts have remained open, but not to the public. So if you we're thinking about going down to the courthouse to get married, you're going to have to put that off for a moment to at least get married in the courthouse. There's virtual ways that you can figure out how to do it, but at the courthouse that's unavailable.
I never thought about that.
But the courts are operating with things that they find to be essential, or where the parties can agree that it can be handled via telephone or Zoom. There are Zoom court hearings that are taking place where you may have an important hearing and you need to show documents to the court, your evidence. At this point, you can share your screen and they can see the documents, or if you're really on the ball, you mail the hard copies a day or two ahead of time, and those things are still operating. Some things that aren't happening, evictions, primarily residential ones. If at this point there's a moratorium on them so that the writs that the sheriff ordinarily goes out and serves aren't being issued. So evictions aren't happening, for instance. There's some amount of delay. It's not as fast as it was, but courts, I was on a hearing the other day where I argued for an hour and a half, and we were on the phone and we made it through and the court made its decision. So those are operating, but the big thing for most people are evictions have ceased for the moment to kind of give people pause.
That's true. And then also the banks are offering, in many cases, forbearance, which has a different meaning than what a lot of people think it is. It's not necessarily putting your payments on the back end of your loan. Right. And we know this, especially because of, I think, what we all dealt with before, and that if you need some breathing room, most of them will work with you, but they're going to want like a little balloon payment on that. So do you want to talk a little bit about that too?
Sure. So there have been a variety of programs that banks are doing, and a lot of times what banks are willing to do depends on your particular loan. Do you have an FHA loan? Do you have a traditional loan? Who's that ultimate backstop? Is it the government or the investors? If it's the FHA loans, then they are kind of have that availability to put it at the end where they're pushing the payments and the interest to the end. Other ones, they may give you a 3-month pause, but then they will want you to catch up entirely after that 3-month period. Now, it's possible you can negotiate some additional wiggle room and say, hey, you knew I was in trouble. What makes you, if I couldn't pay you current over those 3 months, what makes you think I can do it at the end of the 3 months? A balloon payment. So it is about reaching out, having those conversations. Realize you're not just skipping payments that you don't have to make up. They will come due. It's about negotiating what would be the best deal on how they will come due so that you can retain the property and move forward.
And if at all possible, communicate with your lender. If you're in trouble, communicate with them. Find out what programs they have. They've been through this before. We know that. This is nothing new for them, but don't stick your head in the sand, because in many cases there are ways to not go into foreclosure, to not have to short sale. But that brings me around to bankruptcy.
Sure.
And what do people personally, to hire someone for bankruptcy, could that push something like that off? And what would be the reason someone might want to consider bankruptcy now personally? And also if they're possibly a small business that is obviously in trouble.
Sure. So I'd say for both a business and a small person, a small business and a person.
That would be me. I'm 5'1".
There you go. I'm not particularly tall at 5'9". so what in both cases, what they'd want to do is evaluate your financials, your financial situation. A lot of times we're living our daily lives and we don't think too much about the whole picture or the crunches that we're having. It's kind of, we pay our monthlies and we move on, and you just wake up and you repeat. But now's a good time to think about, what is that overall debt out there? Are things is it a pause blip moment for me, or is this some major change that has occurred from this? Right now we're seeing a lot of furloughs and layoffs and things like that. But some of those people will be picked back up in a couple months. Other ones, they're unsure. What you'll want to consider, as part of your bankruptcy picture is that amount of debt. If things are going to improve for you, and you're going to be able to become current again on your bills, or if this is going to continue to snowball to be a problem. And then also, what can you protect? There's exemptions for individuals. The big one everyone thinks about is your homestead. Your mortgage, they can still foreclose against you, but if you have Amex and other, credit cards and things like that, they can't go against your house. So kind of evaluating what you can protect, your retirement funds and things like that are considerations. And for businesses, it really is determining, is this a momentary issue, or have things so structurally changed that your customers aren't going to come back because they themselves are out of business, and you may have to pivot here. And there's some creative things to do. It's, as you mentioned, with talking with your lenders, now's a good time to develop a plan to talk to all your creditors, because some of them are going to want $1 more than $0, which is what they could look at down the road.
It seems to be.
Yeah,
I'm very much. I've actually had some reach out to me.
Yeah.
And say, listen, being very proactive. This is what we're going to do, and this is, tell us what your situation, which I think is brilliant. I think from a PR standpoint, absolutely. I think it's fantastic. Minimum payments, if you can, just make those minimum payments. Don't skip them. Don't give them a reason to cancel you, or, whatever. As far as second homes, we live in South Florida. People have vacation homes, second homes. How does that come into play? Because they're not homesteaded.
Sure. If you're married and it's in Florida, and you own it with your spouse, then it can be the tenants by the entirety exemption, or which can protect it if your creditors are only one spouse's. Let's say only the husband or the wife is on the credit cards, and then you start to get credit card judgments against you. Well, if you against one of you. If you both own that second piece of property, you can claim it exempt as tenants by the entirety, and it can't be touched. So it's something to think about, as you're kind of structuring who's incurring debt in whose name. Maybe it's a strategy to divide it up. And one thing to think about is we're all at home, a lot together. Probably consider, being nice to each other, because you may need to claim that exemption.
There you go. I don't disagree with that one. Try to be nice,
Yeah. Patience is key now.
Yeah, it really is. Certain, obviously, businesses we know are going to have a very, very hard time coming back. I think about a lot of the restaurants that, we're all supporting with takeout and pickup and everything. Timing wise, when should someone or a business reach out to someone like yourself, just so that they understand their options? Because I think the thing that holds so many people back is that fear of they're not going to like what you have to say. But at the end of the day, I think knowledge is power, and knowing here are my options. Oh, and by the way, and this is also a second part of this question. Say you file bankruptcy and you start getting back on your feet again. Maybe you get a side hustle, side gig, whatever. Can you stop that bankruptcy?
Sure. Okay. So I think it's better sooner rather than later to at least start having the conversation and have your options. Like you said, some people don't necessarily want to hear what's out there, because there's this kind of fear of the unknown. But the other part of it is, hey, some people don't want to be seen going in and out of a bankruptcy lawyer's office. Now, my firm does a lot of things, so you could be coming in for any number of reasons.
Right.
But I'll tell you this: I've represented a lot of people around town that you'd have no idea that I did, because unless they come up to me, I will smile and be nice, but I'm not going to go over and say, hi at dinner or something like that, because it's their business. I help them out, and we move forward, and that's great. A lot of people are not paying their rent. And hey, you may, when you're evaluating whether to go, if you're going to come back or not, you may be able to get a great deal on a lease now for a commercial office building, because people are kind of evaluating how much space they need going forward. So I think it's sooner rather than later. If you file, well, let's say you're an individual, you're kind of in. You can dismiss the case if you file a certain chapter, but the hit to your credit will have already occurred. And at that point, it probably makes sense to go forward and discharge those debts. One thing to keep in mind is you can only discharge debts every 7 years. And, we're not so far out from the Great Recession, but a lot of people will probably, some amount of people will have to go through another time. So that timing is important. At least you can kind of set up and weigh your options and maybe better position yourself to not have problems going through a bankruptcy case.
What debts are not allowed in a bankruptcy? And I know there's different types of bankruptcies.
Sure. So let's say types of debts that aren't generally wiped out. Generally not student loans. However, there's a very big and helpful decision out of New York that did allow a gentleman to wipe out several hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of student debt, and it lessened what was a very strict standard, this undue hardship, like absent, of severe disability that occurs and your inability to pay, and you'd previously made payments, it was almost impossible. But now a New York judge has given a legal framework that a lot of people are challenging student debts. Certain taxes won't be discharged. Let's say you're an employer and you don't pay the employer side of the payroll tax. That'll follow you. But other than that, broadly, you can discharge most of your debts. if you defraud somebody out of money, you can't discharge that one. But they would
Right.
have to come in and challenge you on it. And some people don't challenge you. Not that I'm encouraging people to do that, but you can discharge a wide variety of debts. And like I said, I expect a lot more people to challenge the student loan one, which is a substantial figure for most people.
Yeah, it is. It really is. So the last thing I want to ask you about in regard to this is, what are the types of bankruptcies available? And then I have something a little lighter to ask you.
So you have the Chapter 7. It's generally for individuals, but also businesses. It's the liquidation one. You come in, you say, hey, this is what I have. Please, distribute it to my creditors, less what I get to keep with my exemptions, and you move on pretty quickly. A Chapter 13, you pay your disposable income, the amount above what you need to live under Florida law, and you pay that to your creditors, that disposable amount, for 3 to 5 years, depending on your income level. And then Chapter 11 is for, primarily we think of GM and big companies that file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Right.
Primarily businesses that what you can do is you can restructure your debt and extend out debt payments and tinker with interest rates and do other things by confirming a plan. I've also represented high net worth individuals who qualify for Chapter 11. And those are the primary chapters. There's Chapter 9, which is municipal and city bankruptcies. But we'll, in Boca Raton, we've been very thoughtful of our reserves and everything else. So I don't see that.
Yes.
But that other cities have not planned
That's
that well.
Good.
No.
I had a transaction in December, and a homeowners association had filed bankruptcy.
Okay.
And so that was I think, honestly, that was a first. I've been doing real estate down here since 2003, and that was a first. It had already been done, and they were almost through the payment structure from all the homeowners. But yeah, very interesting. I won't say what community, but nice little community in West Boca, but it was kind of like, what? So, these things come up.
I may have been involved in that case, so I won't bring up the community.
Too many HOAs, so yeah, we'll talk about that offline. But we got the house sold in
and
the community.
And we'll see. I think a lot of HOAs, there are things that people stop paying first, and one of the first things people stop going to is the dentist. But then after that, it's HOAs.
It's their maintenance fees.
It's their maintenance fees, but as HOAs have foreclosure powers also, people may reevaluate what they prioritize.
Well, actually, that's a good point, because one of the things back when we were dealing with so much before, that was a big takeaway for me, which was try not to screw around with your maintenance fees, because they can foreclose as well, not just
Absolutely.
a lender.
Yeah.
And they will. And they will do it fast.
Yes.
So that's a really good point. So I appreciate all this information. I think it's going to be very helpful, not just for our #SoBoca followers and listeners, but people in general who are unfamiliar with bankruptcy and may have to make that phone call. What is the best way to reach you?
Sure. So the best way to reach me is, and I don't call myself nearly enough.
I don't know my one kid's number, so there you go.
It's the office at 561-549-9036. And my email, which is tzeichman, ZEICHMAN @bmulaw.com.
There you go. So one of the things that, we are foodies, I think, and when things are normal, we're out and about at different restaurants and things like that. What's one of your, I asked this actually on my real estate podcast, if you could break bread with someone, anyone, could be, dead or alive, who would that be? And where would you break bread at locally?
Oh man. So I'm going to go a little odd, but he's a Renaissance man because he's been successful in politics, athletics, and movies and entertainment. So I would go with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And
Arnold.
and I don't
That's a good one.
and I don't know if pizza counts as bread, but I'd go to Tommaso's and eat
There you go.
and
I
do it
love
there.
that. Arnold has a very entertaining TikTok channel, by the
Okay.
way. He's hilarious on there. And I watch Maria Shriver on Instagram doing these really cool, thoughtful interviews. And then I flip over to TikTok and there's Arnold.
There
And
he is.
apparently they have mini horses. So he's always doing stuff with these damn mini horses. It's very funny. I love that though. And what kind of pizza?
I would stay classic with the pepperoni.
The pepperoni. I like a white pizza myself.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but we love Tommaso's too. So, well, I so appreciate you coming away, and I think this is great information for anyone who has questions, concerns, is a little nervous, isn't sure if they should or not, and whether you're a business or whether you're an individual and you have these questions, reach out to Tom. He's an awesome resource. He's someone I completely, feel comfortable to have on the show because he's always got very good, timely information that, and the way you present it is, okay, you would make someone feel very comfortable having these questions and
I
low
appreciate
pressure.
that.
Yeah, very much so. So I appreciate you coming on today. Hey guys, make sure you subscribe to Boca, s3osboca.com. We drop a podcast show once a week. I always videotape them now, and so they end up on Facebook and social media. Follow us at Boca on Instagram and YouTube. And thanks for joining us for the show today. And thanks again, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks. Zeichman